child should never fear the home they live in, but for 11-year-old Jayden-Lee Meek, the walls meant to protect him became a silent witness to an unthinkable betrayal. His story isn't just a tragedy, it's a wake-up call. How many children are suffering behind closed doors while the world looks away? To continue with this story and to stand for justice for Jayden-Lee and children like him, please subscribe right now. It's important. Comment below where you're watching from so we can see how far Jayden-Lee's story is reaching. And together, we can be the voices that refuse to let this be forgotten. On July 14, 2025, a heavy silence filled Court J in Johannesburg. The case number was SH 233 of 2025. But it wasn't just another case on the docket. It was the day the mother of 11-year-old Jayden-Lee Meek stood before the court, accused of taking the very life she was meant to protect. The accused was Tiffany Meek, just 31 years old, now facing the weight of the law and the eyes of a community shattered by grief. She stood quietly as the charges were read: murder, defeating the ends of justice, obstructing the administration of justice, and attempting to cover up her son's death. Each charge echoed through the courtroom, each word a reminder of the small boy who once dreamed of becoming a soccer star. The clerk called out names, confirming the presence of prosecutors, the court interpreter, and legal aid officers, moving through the formalities that felt cold against the heartbreak hanging in the air. The magistrate reminded those in the gallery to keep quiet, to respect the gravity of why they were all there, while family members and activists sat clutching photos of Jayden-Lee, their faces etched with pain. Tiffany's legal representative was missing, forcing her to consider applying for legal aid. Her voice was barely above a whisper as she confirmed she understood her rights and the seriousness of the charges against her. She was told she could apply for bail, but would need to present evidence proving she was a suitable candidate, a thin hope against the evidence gathering like storm clouds over her head. The prosecutors requested time to prepare for the bail application, seeking a postponement to July 18th. Tiffany was led back into custody as murmurs rippled through the gallery, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone in that small courtroom. As the session ended, the magistrate instructed those in attendance to leave quietly, in an orderly fashion. Outside, the tension was thick, the community torn between grief, anger, and a desperate need for justice. Inside that courtroom, on that cold July day, the reality settled in. The mother, who once wept on camera for her missing son, now stood accused of ending his life, as a community watched, demanding answers for a tragedy that should have never happened. Outside the courtroom, under the gray July sky, the community gathered, their faces marked by grief and exhaustion. Mothers, activists, neighbors, and classmates came together, holding candles, holding each other, holding on to the memory of an 11-year-old boy whose life was stolen in the place he should have felt safest. An activist stepped forward, her voice trembling as she spoke about the weight they all carried that day. She spoke for the mothers who could not sleep, wondering what Jayden-Lee's last moments were like, wondering who he called out to in the darkness, hoping someone would come. She spoke of how every child learns to call out, "Mommy," when they are afraid, and how that word now felt like a knife in the hearts of those left behind. She questioned why it took so long for help to come, why the systems meant to protect children failed to act with urgency when a child was reported missing. She spoke about how many times it has been proven that those closest to the victim are often the ones who hurt them most, and how Tiffany's refusal to allow police to search her flat should have been a warning. The heartbreak was not just in the words spoken, but in the silence that followed, as mothers and fathers lowered their heads, as tears fell, as the weight of what was lost settled into the spaces between them. They spoke of failure, not just the failure of one mother, but of a system that moves too slowly, a system that should have broken down the doors to save Jayden-Lee before it was too late. They promised they would not stop seeking justice, that they would stand beside Jayden-Lee's family at every court appearance, that they would not let his name be forgotten in the noise of other tragedies, that they would continue to raise their voices as mothers, as neighbors, as a community that refuses to be silent in the face of injustice. In Fleurhof, the pain is deep, but so is the determination, because Jayden-Lee's story is not just about loss, it is a reminder that every child's life matters, and that justice, no matter how delayed, must come. At a crowded press conference, the deputy police minister stood behind a podium, facing cameras, microphones, and the raw gaze of a community demanding answers. The room was tense as officials acknowledged what many in Fleurhof already felt in their bones. The system failed Jayden-Lee Meek. The spokesperson began by expressing deep regret that Jayden was found lifeless in the very place where he should have been safe, his home. They described how, on the day Jayden was reported missing, the police response fell short. It took too long to act, too long to mobilize, too long to recognize that a child's life was in danger. They admitted they had received backlash from the community, activists, and even members of parliament for the slow response and the time it took to secure a breakthrough in the investigation. They acknowledged the painful reality that many times, those closest to the victim are the perpetrators, and that when Tiffany refused to allow officers into her flat, it should have been a red flag. But they explained, building a case that could stand in court required patience, evidence, and certainty. They spoke of how detectives had to work meticulously, gathering every piece of evidence, following every lead, and coordinating with prosecutors to secure a warrant for Tiffany's arrest. The investigation, they said, demanded resources and time they wished they could have spared. There was a moment of solemnity as the minister thanked the investigating officers for their dedication, for working long hours to piece together the truth in a case that was as heartbreaking as it was complex. Yet they did not shy away from acknowledging the pain that too much too late had cost the community. They urged parents and caregivers across the nation to seek help when in distress, to reach out before a tragedy unfolds, to see in Jayden's story a lesson that the silence of suffering can end in devastation. They reminded everyone that the justice system, while flawed, had a duty to protect the vulnerable, even when it meant questioning those closest to them. As the conference ended, the message was clear. The investigation was far from over, and the fight for justice for Jayden-Lee Meek would continue. But the weight of what was lost, an 11-year-old boy with dreams and a smile that once brightened rooms, was a reminder to every officer and every leader present that a child's life can never be replaced, and justice, no matter how long it takes, must be pursued with unwavering resolve. In the quiet that followed the court dates, the vigils and the press conferences, a single truth remains. We live in a world where a child's safety cannot be assumed, even within their own home. Jayden-Lee Meek's story is more than a tragedy. It is a mirror, reflecting the cracks in the systems meant to protect the innocent. Jayden-Lee was a child with dreams, laughter, and a future that should have been his to live. His death is not just another case file to be archived and forgotten. It is a call for us to look closely at how we protect children, how we respond when they go missing, and how we listen when the signs of danger are right in front of us. It is a call for neighbors to speak up when something feels wrong, for authorities to act with urgency when a child disappears, for communities to remain vigilant, not only in the aftermath of tragedy, but in the everyday moments where intervention can save a life. Jayden-Lee's story exposes the uncomfortable truth that sometimes the very people meant to protect can be the ones who harm, and that silence, hesitation, and systemic failures can cost lives that should have been spared. But this story is not over. Justice is being sought, a community is rising, refusing to let Jayden-Lee's name fade into the background. And as we remember him, we are reminded of our responsibility to protect children everywhere, those whose voices are too small to be heard over the noise, those whose smiles hide fear, and those whose cries go unanswered behind closed doors. If you believe in justice for Jayden-Lee, if you believe in protecting every child, stay informed, stay watchful, and never look away, because the fight for justice, the fight for safety, the fight for change should never be forgotten. Please subscribe, share Jayden-Lee's story, and let his memory be a spark that lights the way toward a world where every child is truly safe.